I was slicing carrots on a worn bamboo cutting board when my daughter-in-law, Jessica, said it. "You're not even contributing. Why should we keep feeding you?" At first I thought I'd misheard her. The words were so blunt, so lacking in grace. They didn't compute. I stood still, knife halfway through a carrot, the scrape of the blade against wood frozen in time. I turned toward her slowly. She didn't blink. She meant it. The kitchen smelled of garlic and thyme, the kind of smell that should have meant comfort, not contempt. My son, Mark, sat a few feet away on the couch, scrolling through his phone. Not a twitch, not a glance, just the blue glow on his face and the slight movement of his thumb. He didn't even flinch. "Mark?" I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "Did you hear what she just said?" He barely looked up. "Mom, we've talked about this." Had we? Maybe I missed that memo. Maybe the conversations where I was deemed a financial drain happened between texts and conference calls, not in front of me. "Groceries are expensive," he added. "You've been here for 2 months. It's starting to feel like you're not trying." Not trying. I stood there, knife in hand, stunned. I cook for them, every day. I wash their dishes, wipe their counters, fold their laundry. I pick Lily up from daycare when they're both stuck at work or too tired to get her. I vacuum, mop, sweep. I've been doing everything I can to repay the roof they've lent me over my head. But none of that, apparently, pays the bills. Jessica tied up the trash bag like it was just another chore she was nobly performing, like asking me to leave was some kind of logistical necessity. "We're not trying to be cruel," she said. "But this isn't working anymore. We can't afford an extra mouth. It's not personal, it's just survival." Survival. That word, coming from 2 people who ate dinner every night on plates I'd washed, with food I'd paid for with my own debit card. I looked over at the fridge, full, stocked with produce, eggs, milk. Most of it I'd picked up 2 days ago, while they were both too busy to shop. The casserole on the counter, the one I'd made just an hour earlier, was still warm, untouched. I stared at it, then back at Jessica. "You want me to leave?" I said, "over food?" Jessica barely looked up from the trash bag. "We thought maybe your sister could take you in. Or one of those co-living places for seniors. You'd have more of your own space anyway." "My sister's been gone 5 years," I said quietly. "You know that." Mark stood up, letting out a deep sigh, like he was the victim here. "Look, Mom, you raised me to be practical. Rent's gone up, daycare's outrageous, groceries are nuts. This isn't sustainable." I looked at him. Really looked. Not at the man in slacks and a company polo, but at the boy who used to fall asleep in my lap after watching cartoons. The boy I stayed up with when he had a 104-degree fever and couldn't hold anything down. The teenager I supported through college applications, through heartbreaks and broken-down cars. I remembered the Christmas I skipped dinner so he could have a decent gift. I remembered the $1,000 I took from my retirement savings to help pay for their wedding and the deposit on this very home. And now it came down to grocery bills. I turned off the stove burner and took a step back. My suitcase, I realized, had been sitting by the door since last night, quiet, packed, like it had been waiting for the cue, like a stray dog's leash, coiled and ready. "I guess I'll be going then," I said, and my voice didn't shake. Jessica glanced at her watch. "We'll call you a cab. You'll land on your feet. You're tough." I didn't speak. I looked around their kitchen. The backsplash I helped pick, the curtains I hemmed when they couldn't afford custom lengths, the birthday card Lily made for me, still magnet pinned to the fridge, the kind of life I'd helped build for them. Then I reached for my bag. As I passed the kitchen island, I paused. "The rent," I said, "on this place. I helped cover it for a year, so you two could stay afloat. Remember that?" Jessica rolled her eyes, "And we're grateful. But that doesn't mean you get a lifetime pass." I nodded slowly. "Right. A lifetime pass." And then I stepped out. No hug. No goodbye. Just the sound of the lock clicking behind me, final and indifferent. Outside, the sky was a dull gray. It had the look of rain, but not the smell. The cab they called was waiting, its engine humming softly. I climbed in, my suitcase on the seat beside me. The driver glanced at me through the mirror but didn't ask questions, just waited for the address. I gave him one. Not my sister's, not a friend's. I told him to take me to a budget motel near the train station. That morning, a lawyer had called. My brother, the one I hadn't spoken to in years, who passed 6 months ago, had left me his entire estate. Included was a fully paid-off fourplex in a central part of the city, a rundown, neglected building. But mine, he'd left it to me without ceremony. No strings, no letters, just a legal signature and a quiet note in the file. She'll know what to do. I hadn't told Mark or Jessica. I wanted to see how they'd treat me when they thought I had nothing. Now, I had my answer, and the meter was still running. The cab ride to the motel was quiet. I didn't cry, not in the back seat, not when we pulled away from Mark and Jessica's street, not when we stopped at 2 red lights and passed the daycare where I'd picked Lily up so many times I knew the murals by heart. I didn't cry because somewhere inside me, underneath the fatigue and the disbelief, there was a steadiness forming, something hardening, like cooling steel. The driver dropped me off in front of the Budget Inn just after sunset. I paid in cash. The man at the front desk didn't ask why a woman in her 60s was checking in alone with a single battered suitcase and no return date. He just slid me a keycard and gestured down the hall. Room 106. 2 lamps, 1 window, a showerhead that squealed like a tea kettle, and flickered light bulbs that made the whole room feel like a confession booth. I didn't unpack. I sat on the edge of the bed, shoes still on, and stared at the wall. How quickly a house becomes a memory. Mark and Jessica had said it was about groceries, about space, about survival. But what they didn't say spoke louder than anything. The tone, the look on Mark's face when he didn't even defend me. The way Jessica carried the trash bag like she was already sweeping me out of their life. I took out my phone and stared at it. There were no missed calls, no texts asking if I made it safely, not even a message from Lily, though I knew she was too young to have a phone of her own. Still, the silence stung. I opened a message from Clara, my sister. She'd texted earlier that morning, before everything unraveled. "You want the key, or not?" That was our shorthand. Years ago, before our father passed, he told us something he never put in his will. It wasn't in any bank statement or public record. A 4-unit building, run down even back then, that he had bought decades ago and held in a quiet trust under both our names. It wasn't fancy, just a red brick fourplex in an old neighborhood where the trees had grown taller than the streetlights. He told us to never speak of it. Just in case everything else goes to hell, he had said. At the time I thought it was sentimental nonsense. I had a job, a home, a son, a future I thought was unshakable. Clara had kept it afloat, paid the taxes, handled the bills, never rented it, just enough upkeep to keep the city off our backs. For years, I didn't touch it, didn't need it. But now, it was the only thing in this world that was truly mine. I called her. My hand didn't shake. She answered on the second ring. She didn't say hello. Just, "So you still want that key?" "Yes," I said. "I'm ready." She didn't ask what had happened. She didn't say "I told you so," just gave me the address and said, "It's empty. Been empty. You're on the title. Do what you want." And that was that. I sat on the bed in the Budget Motel, hands folded, staring at the scuffed wall with the faintest mark of what once might have been a framed picture. This wasn't heartbreak anymore. It was clarity. Mark and Jessica hadn't kicked me out because of food. They kicked me out because I no longer served their convenience. I used to pick Lily up, mop the floors, prepare meals, do laundry, silent, constant contributions that were only invisible because they were expected. But the moment I stopped being useful, I became expensive. An extra mouth. I laid back on the stiff mattress and stared at the ceiling. My whole body ached. Not from the walk, not from the cab ride, but from the realization that years of sacrifice could be erased by a single grocery bill. The next morning, I woke early. My neck was sore, my back tight. The motel coffee was weak, but it was hot. I sipped it slowly, watching the morning light stretch across the floor, and then I borrowed a car. It belonged to an old friend, someone who still believed I was worth helping. I didn't tell her what happened, just that I needed to see a property. She handed over the keys like it was nothing. Some kindness still existed in the world. By noon, I pulled up to the building. It looked exactly as I remembered it, only smaller. Red bricks, faded but strong. 4 front doors, each with a black metal number, 1 through 4. The lawn was overgrown, the mailbox leaning like it had given up. The paint on the trim had peeled like sunburnt skin, but the bones were solid. It was still standing. Like me. I walked up to the gate and unlocked it with the key Clara had overnighted to the motel. It clicked. Clean. No resistance. The front door creaked open with a push. The air smelled like dust and memory. Not mildew, not rot, just oldness. Quiet. Untouched. No squatters, no vandalism, just time. Time and silence. I walked through each of the 4 units. 2 bedrooms each. Wooden floors. Private laundry hookups. Built-ins that had survived decades. Cabinets that needed scrubbing. Windows that begged for new screens. But it was all there. I stood in the back unit, Unit 3, and opened the closet. Inside were 3 things. A rusty folding chair. A stack of ledger books. And a small wooden box. The kind Dad used to keep his receipts in. I opened the ledgers. Inside, his thick handwriting filled page after page. Notes on past tenants. Repairs, rent schedules, doodles of new layouts, and cost projections. He had planned to renovate, someday. He had wanted this place to be something more. He never got to finish it. Now, maybe I could. I whispered, "Thanks, Dad." No ceremony, no applause, just that. And for the first time in a long time, I felt still. Not stuck. Still. This was mine. This was a beginning. I didn't go back to the motel that night. I stayed in Unit 3, slept on the floor with just my coat for a blanket and my purse for a pillow. It wasn't comfortable. The wood was cold, and the air had that sharp, empty chill you only get in long vacant buildings. But it was mine, and after what I'd just come from, the silence felt like an embrace. No one demanding dinner, no one avoiding eye contact, no one tallying the cost of keeping me alive. Just dust, brick, and the faint, steady creak of an old building still holding on. The next morning, I made a list. Not a short one. A list that would take weeks, months to finish. Repairs, inspections, permits, appliances. I wrote it all down in one of Dad's old ledgers, each task neatly boxed and underlined. Patch drywall, in Unit 1. Replace screens, in Units 2 and 4. Check water heater. Paint trim. Fix broken mailbox. Scrub every surface. It wasn't just about making the place livable. It was about making it mine. Every repair I logged, every corner I measured, every screw I tightened, it stitched something back together in me. Something Mark and Jessica had tried to unravel. That night, I slept on the floor again. And the night after that, then Clara stopped by. She knocked twice. No warning, just her red sedan pulling up in the afternoon, and a bag of groceries in hand. "I figured you didn't have anything stocked," she said, stepping into the unit like it hadn't been abandoned for a decade. I nodded. "Not yet." She placed the bag on the counter and looked around. "Smells like old books and elbow grease. You working off a grudge?" I smiled faintly. More like reclaiming lost ground. She didn't push. Just unpacked bread, eggs, instant coffee, and 3 cans of soup. "I thought you hated this place," I said. "I do," she replied, "but you need it. So now I don't." That was the closest thing to love we'd exchanged in years. She stayed for an hour, helped me take down the cracked curtains, and then left with a brief hug that landed halfway between stiff and sincere. After she left, I stood in the hallway with my arms crossed and stared at the wall. This building had history. Not just mine, Dad's too. His handwriting in the ledgers was neat, consistent, block letters with sharp corners. He wasn't an affectionate man, but he was methodical, intentional. This building was the one soft promise he ever made to us. He never said it aloud, but I knew now it was his way of saying he believed we might need saving someday. He was right. By the end of the week, I had a contractor out to check the roof and plumbing. The man looked surprised when I met him, with my own flashlight and clipboard. "You the owner?" he asked. I nodded. He looked at me for a moment. "Good bones," he said. "Ugly now, but solid." Same could have been said about me. The money from the estate wouldn't last forever, but it was enough to renovate. Enough to turn this place into something real. Not fancy, not flashy, just clean, safe, whole. That was all I needed. For the next month, I worked. Daylight to dusk, with a few hired hands and one good property manager, a woman named Pam, who looked like she'd retired twice and didn't have time for anyone's nonsense. I liked her instantly. "I can handle the listing and tours," she told me. "You just tell me who you want and what you won't tolerate." I gave her 2 rules. No smokers. No one who looked down on others for struggling. She nodded. Fair enough. I didn't tell her anything else. I didn't tell her about Mark or Jessica. Didn't mention Lily. Didn't talk about casseroles or eviction notices or the click of a lock behind my back. She didn't ask. She just handled business like a pro, showing up with spreadsheets and questions, helping me pick paint colors that made the units feel open, bright. By mid-October, I had 3 fully cleaned, modestly updated units, ready for renters. Unit 3, my unit was still bare but warm. I had a bed now, second-hand, and a small couch, a chipped table, and 2 sturdy chairs. 1 lamp in the corner that hummed softly, but held steady. It wasn't much, but it was more than I'd had in months. And it was mine. Then Pam called. We got an application. I reached for my pen. Let's hear it. Couple, mid-30s, 1 kid, stable jobs, decent credit, no pets. Names? There was a pause. She said them softly, almost like she knew. Mark and Jessica Hill. Daughter's name is Lily. The pen slipped from my fingers. Are you sure? I asked. I double-checked, Pam said. I didn't connect the dots at first, but yeah, it's them. My heart didn't pound. My hands didn't shake. I just sat. They had no idea. They were applying to live in my building, the one I'd rebuilt from the bones up, the one I slept in while they dined on food I bought and then threw me out for eating a second egg. Pam continued. Application's clean. They added a note. Said they're trying to start over after some hard months. Said they're looking for somewhere quiet, somewhere stable. Stable. I almost laughed. Should I schedule a showing? She asked. I closed my eyes. Yes. Set it up. And I'll be there. You sure? I opened them again. I want to meet the applicants. Pam scheduled the showing for a Wednesday afternoon. They're available after 3, she said over the phone. Want me to run it like normal? No, I said. Introduce me as your assistant. Nothing more. Another pause. You sure about this? Yes. It was early October. The trees in the neighborhood were starting to turn, spilling yellow and copper onto the sidewalk. I stood in the mirror that morning, trying to decide what face to wear. I pulled my gray hair back in a tight bun, swapped my pale cardigan for a darker one. Beige, still soft, still neutral. No lipstick, no perfume. Glasses on, voice calm. I was going to see my son and his wife as tenants, not family. They didn't deserve that word anymore. At 3:30 sharp, a dark gray SUV pulled up. The back door swung open before the car had even stopped, and Lily jumped out with her stuffed bunny in one hand. She looked taller, her face longer. The baby's softness was beginning to fade. She ran up the steps like she owned them. This one's mine, she shouted, pointing to the top unit. Mark stepped out next, looking thinner than I remembered. His shirt was tucked into jeans, wrinkled like he'd pulled it from the floor. He rubbed the back of his neck, already tired. Jessica followed, sunglasses still on, even though the sky was overcast. She moved with clipped efficiency, clutching her oversized tote bag and scanning the building like it might betray her. I was already inside, standing beside Pam in the front unit. I watched them through the open blinds as they approached the door. Don't react, I whispered. Pam gave a half smile. Don't worry, I'm an oak. When they walked in, Jessica barely glanced at me. This is Marcy, Pam said, nodding toward me. She helps with property management and renovations. Jessica looked me over, lips pursed. Nice to meet you, she said flatly. Mark barely nodded. His eyes were on the ceilings, the corners, the kitchen. Pam started the tour like any other, pointing out new flooring, fresh paint, updated plumbing. I followed a few steps behind, clipboard in hand, taking notes I didn't need to take. Mark walked into the living room. No mold under the sink? No, I said. All new pipes. Jessica wandered into the kitchen, her fingers trailing along the countertop. It's cleaner than the last 2 places, Pam smiled. The owner put in the work, made sure everything was move-in ready. Jessica raised an eyebrow. Does the landlord live here? Pam glanced toward me. No, she just helps out from time to time. Good, Jessica muttered. We've had bad experiences with landlords hovering. Bad experiences? The woman who tossed me out like expired milk was worried about privacy now? She moved into the next room, without waiting. Mark followed. Lily was already testing the closet doors, chattering about which room could be hers and where her dolls would go. She seems happy, I said quietly to Pam. Pam nodded. Kids always adapt faster. Jessica returned a moment later, sunglasses now resting on her head. It's decent, she said, looking at Pam. If the lease is fair, we're ready to move in. We've been through enough, already. We just want stability. Stability. Again, Mark added, we're not looking for trouble, just peace. I stared at them both. They didn't see me. Not really, and maybe they didn't want to. It was easier to pretend I was someone else, that I wasn't the woman they turned away in their kitchen, like a guest who'd overstayed, that I hadn't once paid for their wedding, their rent, their baby formula. Pam closed the tour like a professional. If you're interested, we'll set up a follow-up to go over lease terms and background screening. Just standard stuff. Mark nodded. Yeah, let's do that. As they turned to leave, Jessica glanced back one last time. This place, she hesitated. It feels like a fresh start. I didn't blink. You'll find the building quiet, I said. And the walls are thick. They walked down the steps hand in hand, Lily skipping behind them. I waited until the door closed before letting out the breath I'd been holding since they arrived. Pam looked at me sideways. How did it feel? Like watching ghosts walk into a trap they built themselves. We didn't speak for a few seconds. Then she asked, are you going to rent to them? I nodded slowly. Yes. You sure that's wise? No, I said. But it's right. She didn't question it further. Later that evening, I sat in Unit 3, the lights dimmed low, listening to the wind slide along the building's walls. I tried to put into words what it was I felt. Not satisfaction. Not revenge. Exactly. It was something heavier, like justice, but colder. Letting them live here wouldn't heal what they'd done. But it would show them what it felt like to live on terms not their own. To exist under rules they didn't write. To be held accountable, even if they never knew why. The next morning, Pam called. They passed the screening. Credit's okay. No red flags. They're approved. I took a long sip of coffee before replying. Scheduled a lease review. The day of the lease signing, I didn't sleep in. I woke before the sun, made a pot of strong coffee, and sat at my kitchen table, watching the light change across the wall. I didn't pace. I didn't rehearse anything in my head. There was nothing left to say. They had already spoken everything they needed to when they locked that door behind me. Pam arrived a little after 10, with a folder tucked under her arm. They're coming at noon, she said. We'll do the usual, highlight the payment schedule, explain the penalties, go over utilities, and I'll just be your assistant again, I said with a faint smile. Pam raised an eyebrow. You sure? We could end this now. I shook my head. No, let them walk right into it. I want them to see how respect looks from the other side. She nodded and began sorting the paperwork. Standard lease. 3% increase annually. Unless property taxes jump. First and last month's rent up front. Utilities on them. Late fee after the third day. Perfect. At exactly noon, the knock came. Jessica walked in first, wearing heels too tall for a lease appointment, and makeup painted on like armor. Mark followed, shirt pressed but wrinkled at the collar. Lily trailed behind, still clinging to that same stuffed bunny I had given her 2 birthdays ago. Pam greeted them professionally, motioned to the table where everything was laid out. I stood nearby, flipping through files and pretending to be absorbed in administrative details. Jessica didn't acknowledge me. Mark gave a half nod, vague recognition that didn't register anything more than a polite habit. Before we begin, Pam said, this lease includes our annual adjustment policy. Just want to make sure we're transparent. Jessica frowned. Adjustment? 3% increase each year, 5% if the city hikes property taxes. Mark exhaled audibly. So rent goes up every year. Pam nodded. That's correct. It's outlined in the lease. Jessica muttered. Figures. Nothing stable lasts anymore. I didn't look up. Mark leaned over the papers, still better than bouncing around. Last place had mold. The one before had a raccoon problem. You'll find this place cleaner, I said calmly. And very quiet. Jessica glanced at me. something flickering across her face, like she was trying to place a voice she half remembered. She didn't ask. Instead, she picked up the pen and started flipping pages. It's fine. Let's just get this over with. Lily had wandered off, sitting cross-legged on the floor by the window, humming softly to herself. Jessica signed first, then Mark. When they got to the last page, she paused. "We'll be dealing with you directly, right?" she asked Pam. "Not her." Pam didn't hesitate. "Marcy just assists with screening and maintenance. You won't need to interact with her." "Good," Jessica said. "No offense, but we've had problems before. Housekeeper types getting involved. It gets messy." Housekeeper types. I swallowed the laugh building in my throat. Jessica had always needed to feel superior, to reduce others to roles she could ignore. Even when I lived under her roof, I was help, not family. I met her eyes without flinching. "Don't worry, I respect boundaries." Pam slid the keys across the table once the payments were verified. "Move-in is this Saturday. You'll receive a welcome packet with contact numbers and the online portal for rent." Mark shook her hand. Jessica barely managed a smile. They turned to leave, Lily skipping behind them. At the door, Jessica said, "Finally, something's going right." I stood there, hands folded behind my back, and watched the door close. Pam turned to me. "You good?" "I'm steady." We didn't speak again until she'd packed up her papers. "You know," she said before she left, "this won't end here. This arrangement? It'll get messy." I nodded. "It's not about mess. It's about memory. I need them to remember what they chose when they thought I was powerless." She tilted her head. "What's the plan?" "Let them move in," I said. "Let them get comfortable." She gave a wry smile. "You're not going to evict them?" "Not yet." I spent the evening walking Unit 3 barefoot. Slowly, methodically. The floors were old hardwood, freshly polished. Every step echoed softly through the walls. I knew they'd hear it below. They were moving into Unit 1, the same unit Dad had once lived in while renovating the others. The same space where he'd scribbled ideas into ledgers, making plans for a future no one else understood. Now they would live under my roof. On my terms. At my mercy. I didn't do it to hurt them. I did it so they would know what it felt like to live in someone else's grace. Not by birthright, not by manipulation, not by guilt, but by contract. That night, I slept well. For the first time in months. I wasn't holding my breath. I didn't dream of door slams or whispered judgment. Just silence. Just mine. They moved in on a Saturday afternoon with the enthusiasm of people who believed they were finally catching a break. I watched from the upstairs window of Unit 3 as the SUV pulled up and the back hatch popped open. 3 mismatched suitcases. A beat-up coffee table. Lily's scooter, still covered in the same stickers we put on it together last spring. Mark carried boxes with his head down, sweat already staining his shirt. Jessica stood on the sidewalk barking instructions like a sergeant. She pointed with sharp fingers, directing where everything should go, snapping at Lily to stay out of the street. It was like watching a rerun of a show I used to star in, but now I was just a shadow in the rafters. They didn't recognize me. I had darkened my hair a shade with a rinse. Clara had brought over and started wearing thicker glasses. The bun helped. The cardigan changed. I looked older, less soft, more stern. But even so, I think they chose not to see me. To see me now would mean confronting what they'd done. It was easier, safer, to pretend I was just another old woman in the building. A helper. A background figure. Let them build their new life on top of floorboards I paid for. They carried in the same dishes I'd given them 2 Christmases ago. White porcelain with little blue flowers around the edge. I saw Jessica pull out the framed print I helped her choose from, that overpriced boutique downtown. The one she said made the house feel mature. She hung it above the couch with a little nod, satisfied. They were trying to recreate stability. They had no idea it was all sitting on my foundation. The first 2 weeks passed quietly. Rent posted on time. No complaints, no maintenance requests, no questions. I crossed paths with them once in the hallway. Jessica nodded curtly. Mark looked away. Lily didn't notice me, just kept talking to her bunny. I walked lighter those days, gave them peace. But I knew it wouldn't last. And it didn't. On the 3rd of November, rent was late. Only by 3 days. But I noticed. Pam texted me. Grace period, or late fee. I typed back. Apply the fee. No exceptions. On the 5th, the payment finally came through. Jessica emailed the property portal. We transferred funds on the 2nd. There must be an error. Pam replied. Cool and firm. Timestamp confirms payment posted on the 5th. Late fee stands. No further reply. In December, the same thing happened again. This time, 5 days late, another fee. And then came the complaint. Mark sent an email titled Upstairs Noise Concerns. I read it aloud, chuckling softly. Whoever lives above us walks like an elephant. It's disruptive and unprofessional. That elephant was me, barefoot, measuring floorboards for the trim I hadn't finished yet. I responded by dragging a step stool across the floor at noon the next day. Not too loud, just enough to echo. That afternoon, a knock came on my door. I opened it to find Jessica standing there, arms crossed, lips tight. She didn't expect me to answer. Oh, she said, blinking. I thought this was vacant. I live here, I said evenly. Her eyes narrowed slightly, searching. Since when? For a while now. Oh, sorry if we've been noisy. Not at all, I said. I barely notice. She lingered like she wanted to say more, but her words were stuck. Then she mumbled, okay then, and turned away. I closed the door slowly, savoring the silence that followed. In January, I raised the rent. 8%. Perfectly legal, all within the contract, no surprises. Pam sent out official notices with polite explanations. Jessica responded first. This feels excessive. We just moved in, Pam replied. Rent increases were disclosed in your lease and approved by the property owner, Jessica wrote back. Tell the owner to enjoy bleeding people dry. I didn't answer, but I instructed Pam to set automated reminders for rent, sent 2 days before the due date, and again on the 1st, and again on the February came. Late again. Only 2 days this time. But patterns matter. I watched as Jessica brought home smaller grocery bags. I saw Mark pace outside on his phone, more often. Their car sat idle some nights. No more takeout, less laughter, fewer lights. They were slipping. Slowly, like a house settling unevenly. And I watched, clipboard in hand. Ledger on my table. The final straw came mid-March. A bounced check. No warning, no email, just a voided payment notice and silence. Pam followed protocol. 3-day notice, to pay or vacate. No reply. Then Mark showed up at Pam's office with Lily in tow. He looked desperate, tired. He pleaded that it must be a mistake, that they were model tenants, that this wasn't like them. Pam said nothing, just handed him a printed breakdown of every late payment, every penalty, every bounced transfer. She delivered it like a surgeon, precise, detached, and possible to argue with. If you can resolve this by Friday, we won't escalate, she said. If not, the owner has authorized a formal eviction. He left without another word. Friday came and went. No payment. No apology. Just a voicemail on Pam's line. Jessica's voice. Shaky, angry, then tearful. We're under a lot of strain right now. The landlord has no idea what it's like to be in our position. Please, just tell her, we need time. A little compassion. Compassion. The word that never passed her lips, the day she threw me out over a second helping of soup. I listened to the voicemail 3 times. Then I called Pam. Go ahead. I post the notice. March 21st. I walked downstairs, holding a sheet of paper I never thought I'd hold. The official eviction notice typed, dated, signed, sealed. My footsteps were steady. I didn't rush, I didn't pause. Outside Unit 1, I stood for a moment. I listened. There were no voices, no running water, just the still hush of early morning when the building is still holding its breath. I pressed the notice to the door. 4 pieces of tape, 1 on each corner. Firm, even, final. Then I turned and walked back upstairs, each step echoing like punctuation. By the time I reached my unit and poured myself a second cup of coffee, I heard the scream. Jessica. She tore the notice down like it had insulted her personally, stormed outside in her robe, cell phone in hand, dragging Lily by the wrist. From my kitchen window, I watched her pace back and forth, yelling into the phone. Her voice rose and fell like a tantrum too old for her face. I couldn't hear every word, but the tone was enough. Rage, disbelief, and underneath it all, panic. Pam called me 2 minutes later. They want a meeting, she said. Face to face, they're claiming retaliation, threatening legal action. Good, I said. Tell them I'll meet them tomorrow. Here, noon. That night, I ironed my clothes. Not because I needed to, because I wanted to. I wanted my cardigan to be crisp, my blouse tucked, my collar smooth. I printed a fresh copy of the lease, every clause highlighted in yellow, late fees, payment timelines, legal grounds for eviction, everything by the book. I didn't sleep much that night. Not because I was nervous, but because I felt the weight of what was coming, a kind of reckoning. The final ledger closing. At exactly noon, I buzzed them in. They climbed the stairs slowly, like people approaching judgment. Jessica entered first, arms crossed, jaw tight. Mark followed, hands stuffed in his pockets. Lily stayed quiet between them, clutching her bunny like a shield. Jessica looked around Unit 3, confused. I thought we were meeting the property manager, she said. You are, I said, stepping out from the kitchen. They both turned. Mark froze. Jessica's face went pale, then red. I'm the owner, I said, have been for months. The silence lasted too long. Then Mark spoke. Wait. What? You've been paying rent to me this whole time, I said, voice calm. The woman you said was too expensive to feed. Jessica blinked. You're joking. No. This is a trap, she snapped. You let us move in. No, I gave you what you said you wanted. Independence, responsibility, and now consequences. Mark stepped forward, voice cracking. Mom, please. We have a kid. We're struggling. We made mistakes, but don't do this. You threw me out, I said. Over groceries, you let me walk out with a suitcase while my debit card was still paying for food in your fridge. Jessica folded her arms tighter. So this is revenge? No, I said. This is a boundary. She laughed bitterly. You're unbelievable. I'm tired, I replied. Tired of being used. Tired of being erased. You didn't even let Lily say goodbye. Mark's voice softened. We didn't know what else to do. We thought you were just staying too long. You mean I outlasted my usefulness? He didn't answer. Jessica looked around the room again, like trying to find a door that would lead her out of this moment. What do you want from us? She asked. Nothing. You can't be serious. You can leave voluntarily, or you can wait for the court date. Either way, you're leaving. Lily peeked up at me from beside her mother, confused, holding that same stuffed rabbit I once sewed the left ear back onto. Jessica stared at me like she might cry, or scream, but instead, she just whispered, How low do you have to be to throw out your own family? You already showed me. I said, I just took notes. Mark's eyes dropped to the floor. Jessica's lip trembled, but no sound came out. They didn't argue further. They just turned and walked out. I stood in my kitchen, watching the closed door for a long time. It wasn't satisfaction I felt. It wasn't even peace. It was finality. This chapter, whatever it had been, was over, not because they were gone, but because I no longer wanted them to stay. They were gone by the end of the month. No drama, no screaming, no second confrontation, just silence, followed by the hollow echo of absence. I watched from my upstairs window as they packed their lives back into those same 3 mismatched suitcases. The second-hand coffee table went last, wedged awkwardly into the back of the SUV like it didn't want to leave either. Lily stood on the sidewalk, holding her stuffed bunny, her coat zipped all the way to her chin. She looked around as if she was trying to remember something she hadn't yet learned. Mark didn't look up once. Jessica kept her sunglasses on, even though the sky was gray. They didn't knock on my door. They didn't try to explain. They just pulled away, tires crunching softly over gravel, the building shrinking behind them. When they were finally gone, I went downstairs. They left behind one dented microwave, a broken drawer they never bothered to report, and a trash bag, half-tied, leaking coffee grounds near the door. I didn't sigh. I didn't scowl. I simply called the cleaning service, handed over a tip before they even started, and told Pam to change the locks. She didn't ask questions. She knew. When she handed me the new set of keys, her hand lingered for a moment. You okay? She asked. I'm clean, I replied. No regrets? I paused. No, just clarity. She gave a single nod and walked away. I didn't host a victory dinner. I didn't toast to karma or uncork anything celebratory. I just made myself a quiet cup of coffee in my own kitchen and watched the steam curl into the sunlight. The apartment was still, calm. It had a kind of stillness I hadn't known in years, not even when I lived alone before moving in with Mark and Jessica. That was a different kind of silence, one laced with fear, with the ache of being unneeded. This silence was choice. This was mine. I decided to keep the building, not to sell it, not to flip it, not even to make a fortune, just to hold it, like my father did, like Clara helped me do when the world stopped making sense. Unit 1, now empty, would eventually find new tenants, but not just anyone. I wasn't going to fill it with faces I couldn't trust. I was going to choose. Pam handled the listings. She screened everyone, and I read every word. By mid-April, I rented the unit to a retired high school teacher named Donna. Widowed, quiet, paid in full. She sent me a thank you card before she even moved in. Unit 2 went to a single mother named Erica. She had a newborn, worked the night shift at the hospital. Her application was raw, barely qualifying, but Pam saw something. So did I. She moved in with 2 boxes and a blanket and left a potted plant on the windowsill before her first night's sleep. They greeted me in the hallway. They smiled. They said, "Good morning." That was all I needed. No demands, no judgment, no ledger of unspoken expectations. Just decency. Some nights, I sat out on the front steps, with a book. The wind carried the faint scent of laundry detergent and blooming trees. My feet rested on the same cracked stone my father laid decades ago. I thought about Mark and Jessica sometimes. Not with bitterness. Just with the kind of detachment you have for old furniture, something that once served a purpose, but doesn't fit anymore. I remembered the cold dinners, the clipped tones, the passive-aggressive remarks. All over groceries, over space, over ego. They believed I owed them permanence because I once gave them life. But parenthood is not a lifetime contract to be demeaned. It's a gift. And like any gift, it loses meaning when it's taken for granted. I don't regret helping them. Not the wedding, not the baby formula, not the rent checks signed without my name. That was who I was. But I won't ever let who I was be used against who I've become. They taught me that, the hard way. Lily's stuffed bunny was the only thing I missed. I hoped she still had it. Some part of me wanted her to remember the good, to know I was there, even when her parents weren't looking. I'd once considered leaving the building in her name, long ago, before any of this unfolded. Now, I wasn't so sure. Let her earn her own home one day, on her own terms. Let her define kindness by more than blood. May arrived with rain, not the violent, thunderclap kind. Just steady, soft drizzle that made the streets shine and the leaves droop under their own weight. I didn't mind. The rain quieted the city in a way I liked. Muted the world. Let everything breathe. I was sipping tea in my kitchen when Pam buzzed. "Delivery downstairs," she said. "Did you order something?" "No." I walked down and opened the door. A box. No return address. Just my name. Helen, written in shaky black marker. I brought it upstairs, set it on the table, opened it. Inside, 2 things. A faded photo of Lily and me, taken last spring in the park. She had ice cream on her chin, and I was laughing, and tucked beside it, folded carefully, was her bunny. The stuffed one I'd sewed the left ear back onto. The one she never let go of. I sat back slowly, the photo trembling in my hand. There was no note, no apology, no explanation, but the message was clear. Jessica, or Mark, or maybe both, had sent it back like an old coat, left behind in a closet. Like a thing, no longer needed, no longer welcome. It should have hurt. Maybe once it would have. But all I felt was stillness. Lily was innocent, but her parents? They'd made their choice. And now they were living in it. I folded the photo, placed it in my desk drawer, and rested the bunny beside it. A memory. Nothing more. That afternoon, I walked through the building with my clipboard. Unit 1 was already listed again. I decided to raise rent slightly, not because I needed the money, but because it felt right. The space had value now. It had history. I was careful with my tenants. I didn't screen for income so much as energy. I wanted people who said thank you, who nodded in the hall, who didn't see me and think, what can she do for me? But rather, what can we share? Donna baked muffins once a week and left 2 by my door. Erica texted me every few days just to say her baby had slept through the night. No demands, just gestures. Real, small, beautiful things. I found myself smiling more, cooking again, listening to music in the evenings. One night, Clara called. I heard, she said. From who? Mark called our cousin Linda. Complaining. Said you ambushed them. I laughed out loud. He used the word ambushed. Yep. And Jessica told Linda you emotionally manipulated them into a lease. Wow, I said. Creative. She asked if you were always this cold. I'm not cold, I said. I'm done. Clara didn't say anything at first. Then, I'm proud of you, Helen. For what it's worth. That meant more than I expected. Growing up, Clara had been the sharp one, the voice of boundaries and firm lines. I was the softer sister, the peacemaker, the one who said yes to avoid the crack in a smile. But not anymore. Now, I was neither soft nor sharp. I was solid. Dad would have liked that. His building, his unspoken gift, it had done more than give me shelter. It had redefined me, brick by brick. I walked through it often now, not because I had to, but because I liked the feel of the floor beneath my feet. I liked hearing Donna's music playing softly through the walls. I liked passing Erica's door and hearing baby giggles. The building was alive again. And so was I. I had one shelf in the living room where I kept old things, the ledger from Dad, a Polaroid of Clara and me, fixing pipes, Lily's bunny, and a small framed quote I'd once found in a thrift store. It read, "Sometimes the gift isn't what you're given, it's what you choose to do with what's left." That felt true. They had given me a wound. I'd turned it into a wall, with a roof. They gave me distance. I built a home out of it. By June, the roses along the fence had bloomed again. They weren't mine, they'd come back on their own, climbing up the chain links like they remembered how the place used to feel before it went still. Pink, and white, and wild. I didn't trim them, I let them spread. Some things, I'd learned, need space to grow into their own shape. The building had started to hum with its own rhythm. Erica's baby had begun walking, wobbly, confident steps that echoed through the hallway in bursts of joy. Donna had taken to leaving handwritten notes outside her door, quotes, poems, recipes. Every week, something new. Kindness is a quiet power. Grief is the tax we pay for love. A garden grows in patience. Sometimes I added my own, tucked them under her note with a paperclip, like a private exchange between old souls. There was no drama here, no one slamming doors, no whispered blame, no cold silences over dinner. Just life. Real life. The kind I used to think was too ordinary to be special. It wasn't. It was everything. I started hosting small gatherings on the porch. Nothing elaborate, just coffee, folding chairs, and conversation. Donna brought banana bread. Erica brought her baby, wrapped in a soft blue blanket. Occasionally, Clara stopped by and sat beside me with a paper cup and a crooked grin. "This place doesn't even look like it used to," she said one day, watching the light catch on the newly painted shutters. "Neither do I," said. She nodded. "That's not a bad thing." It wasn't. I had changed, not hardened, but refined. I no longer mistook proximity for love, or tolerance for respect. When Mark and Jessica left, they took more than their furniture. They took the illusion that family owed you kindness by default. They took my guilt, my second-guessing, my endless rewriting of memories to make space for excuses. And what they left me with was worth more than anything I'd given them. They left me my life. Free from the obligation to keep proving my worth. Free to build something on my own terms. Pam still managed most of the logistics, but she'd taken to spending more time upstairs with me, going over contracts, discussing applicants, or just sharing the kind of laughter that doesn't ask anything in return. One afternoon, we were going over potential tenants for Unit 1 again. "Got a college kid looking for summer housing," she said. "Quiet, low maintenance, references, check out." "Any red flags?" Pam shook her head. "Nope, but then again they never list entitled on applications." We both laughed. What about the mother and daughter who came last week? I asked. Pam nodded. They're interested. The mom's a nurse. Long hours, solid credit. The daughter's 12. Sweet girl. Said she liked the big tree in the backyard. Let's take them, I said. Give them a new start. She scribbled something in her notebook. Got it. I poured us both a fresh cup of coffee and leaned back in my chair. I used to think wealth meant numbers, I said. The size of a savings account. The kind of car you drove. It doesn't? Not anymore. Wealth is having keys to a place no one can take from you. Being able to decide who stays and who goes. It's peace. Pam sipped quietly. You earned it. No, I said. I built it. That night, as the sun dipped low over the roofs, I stood at the upstairs window with the lights off and watched the street. Kids rode bikes, dogs barked, someone was grilling. It smelled like summer. I closed my eyes and remembered the night I left Mark's house. The silence of that cab ride. The weight of the suitcase beside me. The moment when I realized they wouldn't call. Not then. Not ever. I had thought that night was an ending, but it wasn't. It was a door. They thought they were closing it behind me, but they never realized it was my house. It always had been. July came fast, with heat that clung to your skin, and cicadas that sang through the afternoons. The kind of summer that made the pavement shimmer and slowed the whole neighborhood to a hush. Life in the building moved at a quiet rhythm. The nurse and her daughter moved into Unit 1. They brought books and lavender plants, and on move-in day, the little girl handed me a drawing, me standing in front of the building, holding a giant set of keys, flowers in all the windows. Is that me? I asked, smiling. She nodded. My mom said you're the boss here. Something like that, I said. I hung it on my fridge. Pam teased me about it later. You've got fans now. I've got witnesses, I said, to prove I rebuilt something. Sometimes I'd see Erica pushing her baby's stroller around the block, or Donna reading on the bench near the mailbox. People passed each other with smiles. Conversations bloomed slowly, easily. I hadn't realized how badly I'd needed to live in a place where I didn't have to explain myself every time I exhaled. I was finally existing in my own home, not surviving someone else's. Then one day, in the middle of that slow-moving July, Pam called me with a strange tone in her voice. You've got a voicemail left on the tenant line. I think you should hear it. She played it back on speaker. It was Mark. Hi, this is Mark. I'm not sure if this is still the right number or if you'll even get this, but Mom, if you're listening, I wanted to say I'm sorry for everything. I've been meaning to call, just didn't know how. We've been going through a lot. Well, she's not really herself lately. Lily misses you. I miss you. If you ever want to talk, or even just see her. I understand if you don't. Just if you do, I hope you'll call. He left his number. That was it. No mention of what happened, no ownership of what they'd said, no acknowledgement of the cold way they had treated me, but I sat down anyway. The truth was, I didn't know how I felt. That call cracked something. Not wide open, but enough to let a sliver of memory through. Lily, dancing in the kitchen in her socks, laughing as I made pancakes. Mark, sleeping in the back seat on the way home from college, his face at peace. There had been love there once. Even if it had been buried by years of obligation and quiet resentment. Pam watched me from across the kitchen. You going to call him? I was quiet. Then I said, no. Not at all? Not now. Maybe not ever. Pam nodded. Good, that means the power is back in your hands. I'm not trying to punish him, I said. I know. I just don't want to be someone's last resort again. I'm not the net they fall into when they've burned everything else. I know that, too. I placed my hand on the table, fingers grazing the edge of Lily's drawing. She'll remember me, I said. She already does. That night, I walked through the halls of my building and touched each doorknob, not knocking, just remembering. This had once been a dead space. Now it was a sanctuary, and I had earned every brick of it. Not because I was perfect, but because I finally chose myself. August came with its quiet, slow evenings, golden skies that seemed to hold their breath just before the sun dipped below the rooftops. I sat on the porch most nights now, feet bare, cup of tea in hand, listening to the sounds of this little world I'd built. No explosions, no climaxes, just steady life. That's the thing, no one tells you about real peace. It's quiet, almost unremarkable. It doesn't come with applause or grand gestures. It just arrives one day when no one's asking for anything, and you're not waiting to be needed. Pam came by one evening with a clipboard and 2 folders, 2 vacancies opening up in September, she said. Donna's moving in with her daughter. Erica got promoted, heading out of town. I nodded. Good for them, that's what this place was for. To launch people? To let them rest until they're ready again. She smiled. I'll update the listings. I looked at the building. You ever think this place knows? Knows what? When it's done its job. When someone doesn't belong here anymore, or when they do. Pam tilted her head, amused. You give brick and mortar a lot of credit. Brick and mortar saved me, I said. She left an hour later. I stayed on the steps. The air had a softness to it, the kind of softness I hadn't felt since before Mark and Jessica made me believe I was a burden. I thought about the eviction, about the lease, about every quiet step I'd taken above them while they sank. I didn't regret it. Not because it hurt them, but because it saved me. They say forgiveness is freedom. I used to think that meant forgetting. It doesn't. It means no longer bleeding when you touch the scar. I'll never forget what they did. I won't excuse it. But I'm not trapped in it anymore. I don't look over my shoulder. I don't check my phone, hoping they'll remember me. I don't try to prove I was worth more than a bag of groceries. I've learned that some apologies never come, and that's fine. You don't need someone to say I'm sorry to give yourself permission to move on. Sometimes closure is the moment you stop asking for it. I opened the small wooden box on my side table that night. Dad's old box, the one I found in the closet of Unit 3. Inside were his spare keys, an old brass coin, a folded paper with a list of names, and one photo him and Mom sitting on these very steps. Young, unaware of what this building would become. I added something new to it. Lily's bunny, tucked gently in beside the keys, not as a symbol of what I lost, but of what I let go. The next morning, I swept the porch, watered the front plants, and hung a small wooden sign on the front gate. Quiet strength lives here. No one noticed at first, but over the next week, I caught 2 tenants pausing to read it. One nodded to herself. The other smiled. That was enough. I keep a little jar by the front door now, a habit Donna left behind. In it are folded pieces of paper, each with a line I've written to myself. Things I've learned, truths I won't forget again. I pull one out each morning, read it, and carry it with me all day. Some favorites. You are not disposable. Love doesn't excuse disrespect. Silence can be power, too. Peace is the most expensive thing you'll ever own. And the one I pulled today. You didn't lose them, they lost you. Yes, they did.